Welcome to Codex History of Video Games. My name's Tyler Osby.
And I'm Mike Coletta.
And this week, we're going to talk about a subject that we're calling corporate games. Basically, games made by, all games are made by corporations, but games made basically for advertising purposes. And we've got a couple of games we want to focus on today. Mike's going to tell us about Cool Spot, a game that he grew up with. And then I'll talk a little bit about Chex Quest, which is a game that I grew up with.
Yeah. Both of these are kind of, I think we've mentioned both of them in passing on the podcast, but we've never kind of done a deep dive into them. So I felt like this would be a good time to do that because we're kind of in between books here. But the Cool Spot game was developed and published by Virgin Games. And it actually was designed to come out on the Sega Mega Drive / Genesis and the SNES. And that came out for the Mega Drive on April 1993 in North America and May 1993 in Europe. Then for the Super Nintendo, it was September 1993 in North America. And for Europe, they didn't get it until February 24th of 1994, which is pretty late.
Wow.
But yeah, then the game was later ported to the following consoles throughout 1994. I'm not going to say the exact dates on them, but it's the Master System, which if you recall would be like one generation behind the Genesis, the Game Gear, the Game Boy, the Amiga, and MS-DOS. Good old MS-DOS. And it's important to mention too that the Game Boy developer was the third-party company NMS Software. So it's kind of a different game. You know how I would describe it. When you have someone else developing it, it's going to be a little different.
What is Cool Spot? Like what? I don't even know what it's advertising yet.
Oh, Tyler. I'm gonna get there.
Okay.
Can I build the moment, Tyler?
Yes, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
The moment? I'm just kidding. So you can actually play this game if you want to like cheat and pause it and not wait 30 seconds. You can actually play this game right now online in browser in an emulator on arcadespot.com, which is kind of cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I have no idea how many numbers of copies were sold of this game, and I looked it up multiple times, and I was just like, there's just no way to know. There's no way to know. I don't think there's a way to get accurate information. But the genre or gameplay style is action platformer, and average time to beat is 2 hours for just the main story, 2.5 for main story plus extras, or 3 for completionist. I watched someone on YouTube, though, long play 100% completionist everything in an hour and 25 minutes, so that's doable. And then the Metacritic score for this, there isn't one because this is pre-Metacritic, but I did a little math and converted the scores on Wikipedia to make Codacritic, our Codex Metacritic knockoff.
I love it.
So for the SNES, we have an 86 out of 100. And for the Sega Mega Drive, we have a 92 out of 100. So the Sega version was slightly more well received than the SNES.
Okay.
Now, what is Cool Spot, Tyler? When I say Cool Spot, do you have an idea? If I just said that to you, would you know what I was talking about?
No, I would have no idea what you're talking about. I feel like I missed out on some mascot of the 90s that should just trigger something in me, and it doesn't.
Well, you sure did, Tyler, because that mascot from the 90s is the red dot on a can or bottle of 7-Up.
Wow.
That's
okay.
what we're talking about here, is the red dot.
An anthropomorphized version of the red dot in the 7-Up logo.
Yes.
Okay.
They're little red dots. They wear sunglasses. They have white gloves and white shoes a la Mickey Mouse.
Mm-hmm.
And they're really cool. They're called Cool Spots. They roam
Okay,
around.
so there's more than one. This is like a race of humanoid characters. It's not like one thing.
Yes, and that way it's kind of confusing because you play as the titular Cool Spot, but your goal in the game is to rescue other Cool Spots.
Okay.
And collect points and lives. So we'll get into some more detail in that in a moment. But what's cool about the game is when you start the game, it's a splash screen that kind of shows you what you want to do. And it's like designed like a treasure map, like an old paper treasure map. And it says hero wanted. And it tells you how you need to shoot the cages the Cool Spots are trapped in. And you got to release them. And here's the good power-ups. Here's the bad power-ups. But what's funny about it is it's really vague. Like, you don't really know what you need to do. You just need to collect these things to get the cages. In the levels themselves, you have to collect a certain amount of things to get the cages to appear to even beat the level. So they don't really tell you that. It's kind of vague, but we'll get into more detail. So just like most platformers, you can move using the D-pad and jump, obviously, using one of the buttons. No surprises there. But your main weapon of choice is to shoot 7-Up bubbles out of your hand, a.k.a. cool shots. Pretty cool, right?
I'm actually playing it right now in the browser, just like you said. And yep, that's what I'm doing. Shooting cool spots.
And the cool shots fire from the cool spot. Yes.
Got it.
And that fires semi-automatically, as in each time you press the button. You have to press the button each time for it to fire. But you can fire it as fast as you press the button, I recall. Tyler can test it out right now and confirm
it is as fast as you can press the button. Cool spot.
And you can also fire different directions. You can go up, you can go down. So you can make some pretty cool moves where you jump over an enemy and shoot down on them. Though in my experience, it's kind of hard to pull that off, especially on that emulator. Like, it was a lot easier with a controller. As a kid, I was pretty good at this game. So now here's something you don't see every day. Since this game is a little outdated, and I didn't want to just watch a YouTube video of someone talking about Cool Spot, because that's going to ruin my memories of it. I have these memories, right? Not you, random YouTuber. I won't smash the like button. I won't subscribe, okay? I found
You won't even ring the bell?
No, absolutely not. No bell ringing from me today. I found a text guide on Strategy Wiki. Like, old school, just an old-fashioned, you have to read the text guide that describes the steps in each level for what you have to do.
Back in the day, no screenshots, it was just text, but it probably has a cool like logo at the top made in ASCII art, huh?
Yeah. That's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. But especially since the game is like much harder like than I remember it being, it's really handy having all this information about each level. And there are 11 levels in the game. And they're all kind of beach, island, nautical themed, except for when you go indoors. Because it doesn't really tell you, but you adventure from the beach, you go into a building, and then you leave that building and go back outside. That's kind of where it's at. And the building, I'm guessing, is a toy store, just based on what it's like. But here are the levels. This number 1 is Shell Shock, then Peer Pressure, but it's P-I-E-R, little pun, Off the Wall, Waiting Around, Toying Around, Radical Rails, Wound Up, Locomotive, and it's loco and then motive, like separate words, Back to the Wall, Dock and Roll, and then Surf Patrol. And I can't really express this enough. This game pulls no punches. It's kind of hard. Like, I don't know about your experience in the emulator right now, Tyler, but right off the bat in the Shell Shock level, the crab enemies are like out for blood. What you do is you shoot their shells off the hermit crabs, and then they chase you in their boxers until they like blow up and damage you. It's pretty intense. So I think my favorite memory, like for me, of as levels go, what levels I like the most are Wound Up and Locomotive, because the enemies in these levels are all like wind up toys. And then when you're on the Locomotive level, it takes place on a moving train. So that has like some nods to like a Wild West theme. And in fact, the music has like Wild West theme music.
It's like that Uncharted level before the Uncharted level.
Exactly. I think Uncharted actually was based on the Cool Spot level.
Yeah.
If you ask me. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to tell everyone from now on. So the other fun aesthetic of the game is that your character is just like so tiny, so small. So most of the enemies you're fighting are just like little things, you know, like bugs and crabs and mice and toys. And I'm really into the theme as a kid because like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids was really hot at the time. That was still a very important movie franchise in the late 80s, early 90s. Mm-hmm. And this game came out in 1993, 1994. So they were still making sequels to Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and TV shows. So I think that was kind of on the branding for it as well.
Yeah. I kind of like those. I think like the Army Men games were sort of like that too.
Yeah.
The Toy Story games were kind of like that.
I love that aesthetic now, and I've looked at many a Steam game that's trying to recapture my childhood in that way, and I get excited about each and every one, and then some of them come out and some of them don't, which is fine. So your goal in each level is to rescue one of the cool spots trapped there, as I said previously. And to do this, you need to collect the cool points, which look like little red dots to unlock the cage. So on top of that, you're a cool spot, saving other cool spots by collecting little cool spots.
By shooting cool shots.
While shooting cool shots. Yes, wow. That's correct. And then once you unlock the correct amount of points for the difficulty level you're on, you can shoot the cage to blow up the lock, and you rescue the dot and move on to the next level. So the number of cool points needed to unlock is based on difficulty, as I just said. So on easy, you need to have 30. Normal, you have 60. And on hard mode, you have 90 cool points to unlock the cage. Each level has 100 cool points, by the way.
Cool points. That just sounds like adults made a game that like they're like, you know what kids like? They like points. They also like things that are cool. What if we gave them cool points to collect?
Yeah. These kids are going to have such a cool time. So, if you get extra cool points, you can unlock bonus levels between set stages. And the bonus levels are really cool because they take place in a giant 7-Up bottle.
Nice.
And there's just like little bubbles on the sides that shoot you up to the top of the 7-Up bottle, and you fall down and collect the dots, and you run up and you shoot up and you collect the dots. It's really fun. It's kind of a cool idea for a bonus level. Taking damage is fun because there is no health bar. Instead of a classic, you have 100 HP and you take this much damage from an enemy, it has a sticker on top of the screen. And whenever you get hit, the sticker starts to slowly peel off the screen. So when it fully peels off, your character is dead and you lose a life. But you can actually put the sticker back on and re-stick it by collecting beakers of 7-Up to renew your energy.
Of course you would collect 7-Up. 7-Up is the life force of this game.
Exactly. Now you're getting it. So Cool Spot dies by taking damage, falling off the map into a pit of water, or just like a pit of like a classic platforming death pit that has no bottom. And if you run out of time, will also kill your character. You can increase the time by collecting stopwatches in the level, so that way you can get more time to collect all the dots. When you die, you do go back to the last checkpoint and lose a life. And so there are checkpoints at the level too. They look a lot like in Mario, where they just have like a flagpole that goes up when you pass them. So the other thing about this game is there were some port differences. There's some minute differences between the SNES version and the Sega version. And to be completely honest, they didn't seem like they were enough to warrant talking about them. The biggest difference to me is on those 1994 ports, some of the levels were cut out due to memory. So on the Sega Master System and the Game Gear versions of Cool Spot, there were only 8 cool spots to rescue, and the 5th, 7th, and 8th levels of the game were omitted completely. And That's a bummer because the 5th, 7th, and 8th levels were those cool toy levels I was talking about that I think make the game really fun. And so it just makes the whole thing very beach themed and kind of completely ditches the cool toy store that you're going into.
So if you're going to play this game, it's all about the Genesis version or the Mega Drive version?
100%. That's what I would say. And the one that you play on that arcade website is the Mega Drive version.
Nice.
I believe. The Genesis version. So that's the one you want to go with. Also in European versions of the game, this is the other big difference I found that I thought was pretty interesting. They don't actually include references to 7-Up because Cool Spot was only a mascot for 7-Up in America. So you actually, instead, you play as the Spot still, but you just collect cans of virgin soda, and anything branded with 7-Up on it has been taken out of the game.
So they thought the game was good enough that they were like, well, we want to put this out elsewhere, and we're willing to make the changes to remove 7-Up from it so that we can put it out in Europe. So they believed in their product here, that they had a good game that was worth selling even without the 7-Up branding.
Yeah, and I think it is a good game. I'll talk about it a little bit more at the end of this, but I think this game holds up, and I'll tell you why at the end. But as far as development goes, this section is going to be depressingly short. There is nothing online about the history of Cool Spot that I could verify anyway, because I went onto a bunch of different articles and interviews to see if they talk about it with the game's creators, and they never would mention the development of Cool Spot. And I'm going to tell you the main reason why, because David Perry, who was the lead on this game, made other games like Aladdin and Earthworm Jim, two iconic series. So all the interviews kind of talked about those two games, which is fine. I get it. But in an Arcade Attack interview, he's credited with working on Cool Spot, but they never mention it in the interview. So that's kind of a bummer. And obviously there's a team of people behind this game. It wasn't just him. He was just, I think, the design lead on it and the main programmer. But the music is really good in Cool Spot. The entirety of the sound was done by a composer named Tommy Tallarico. And kind of going back to that Perfect Dark episode we talked about, if he designed the voices for Cool Spot, he did a great job. It's really cute. It's a cute little mascot. It makes little funny noises. I love it.
Oh, Tommy Tallarico, he's done a lot of games. He used to host a show on G4 called Electric Playground with another guy. They did game reviews. And yeah, he did music. I think he did like music. I want to say Spyro. And so he's legit. That's like legit music composer for video games.
Well, it's great. I think the sound in this holds up. I think the music and the sound in this game are great. Like the little nods in the music to that locomotive level where it's a Wild West theme. I love that. So as far as like a legacy goes, there are 2 other 7-Up Spot games. The first was actually before Cool Spot. It was a prequel. It was just called Spot the Video Game, and it's really just a 7x7 version of the Chinese game Go with the Cool Spot mascot in it.
That's cool.
And then there was a sequel to Cool Spot called Spot Goes to Hollywood, and that came out on the Mega Drive, the Saturn, and the PlayStation. And I haven't played either one of these yet, so I figured we can kind of save them. I like the idea of us covering these corporate games every once in a while because there are a lot more of them. There are more than you think.
Yeah.
There's like the Noid one with dominoes. There's the candy... Is it the Candy Shop? It's like a Nabisco themed mini golf game that I was trying to find also while researching this episode because I was like, ooh, there's a Nabisco themed mini golf game. And that's actually our friend recommended that to us, Tyler. So it's pretty exciting. I'll tell you about it later off air. I don't know if I could mention them on the show. I don't know if I'm supposed to or not. So I'm not going to.
There were a lot of these kinds of games back in like the 90s when it was like games were sort of cool, but like not for parents. Too. I don't know. It was just like this weird time of like, how can we be cool and hip with the kids? I know, kids love video games. Let's put our mascot in a video game. We can fool these kids into loving it, and it worked.
It was such a 90s, 2000s kind of thing, too. Early 2000s, mid to late 90s thing. Like, there was so many games that were in cereal boxes on CD-ROMs.
You couldn't get away with it today, I don't think. Like, there's just no way. I think like the most recent game that maybe got away with this is like the Burger King games from like 2006. That was probably the last time anybody really got away with doing this sort of thing of like just blatantly dropping their brand into a game, or several games in their case. And I think part of it was the like it was almost like a satire of that, like this sort of janky game with like you were kind of supposed to laugh at how weird it was. And that's the only reason they were able to get away with it, even that recently.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like it would even be easier today with the idea of on a cereal box, you could just have a QR code to download a game on the inside or something. You just have a little piece of paper, and that downloads the game that only they can access inside the cereal box. I don't know. But then again, the company would be like, why are we doing that? Why don't we just give it to everyone? It's free advertising.
Yeah. I don't think that like you would. There's no scarcity there, whereas in the 90s there was some sort of scarcity because like you couldn't just download a game, or you could, but like you couldn't just, it wasn't really practical to just download a game. You needed to like include it with the thing. Nowadays it's like, I don't know, go to the App Store and search for Chex, right? And you'll find the game.
Yeah, you wouldn't download a car, Tyler.
I would if I could.
Okay, so my final thoughts on Cool Spot though. The game holds up. I think it's hard, but it's like a healthy level of hard. It's not, it's going to take you some time to kind of figure it out. It is just like pattern memorization and getting to know the levels like all platformers are. But I think this game is fun. And the big thing about it that makes it different from most platforming games, no boss fights in this entire game. It's just rescuing the cool spots, and that is it. And I think that's kind of fun. It's kind of nice to just... Do you have the strategy of do you want to go get the bonus stage, or do you want to just rescue the cool spots and leave the level because you hate this particular level? I hate crabs in the game. The crabs are always really hard to kill.
Yeah.
And they show up right away, which is a real bummer.
Yeah, well, hey, you get used to them right away then.
That's true. I have never gotten used to it, though. But that is Cool Spot. I'm looking back on this, and maybe I should have included some of the differences between SNES and Sega. But if that's something that really concerns you, you should send us an email, because I'm curious to know if that's the kind of details that you're like, we need this in a Codex episode. That's what we need right now. Michael. That's right. You can drop my full name if
Wow.
that's the case. If you're mad at me about not covering the Sega versus SNES console wars aspect of this video game, email us and drop my full name so I know. But with that, I think we're moving on to another great... This might be the greatest promotional mascot game.
Honestly, I think it is, and I will tell you why. But we'll start here at the beginning. We're going to talk about Chex Quest here. And in the 90s, video games were cool with kids and teenagers. They weren't really that cool with parents, mostly because adults kind of thought games were like violent, a waste of time. They probably had a negative effect, probably, too. It was like, we've been over the whole panic of the early 90s of violent video games and all that stuff, so we don't need to rehash that. But it was definitely seen as like a kid's medium. And so it was a great way for companies to try to connect with kids in that way, with stuff like what you were talking about with Cool Spot. And what's also popular with kids and parents too, I suppose, is breakfast. In the 90s, I feel like maybe it's still the same today. I don't watch a lot of linear TV today, so I don't see a lot of ads the way that I used to see ads in the 90s. But like it was all about breakfast cereals in the 90s, right? Like kids' TV shows were just always advertising breakfast. Maybe that's not the case anymore.
I think it might still be the case.
Okay.
I think that they still talk breakfast quite a bit on television. But
okay.
I mean, I haven't watched Saturday. Are Saturday morning cartoons still a thing? Is that still a thing?
I don't know, like, because to be honest, like I said, I don't watch, like, TV channels are not really a thing for me because I just don't watch TV in that way anymore. So like a Saturday morning block is a concept that doesn't mean anything to me. I can watch cartoons whenever I want, right?
Yeah, and advertising has gotten so targeted too. Like, for example, I was like, well, maybe my YouTube algorithm, because I watch a couple like people that talk about Lego sets and stuff. I'm that kind of nerd, not ashamed of it. Okay. And because of that, often on those videos, I get advertisements for like remote control cars and stuff and like kids' toys because they think I'm a child. But I haven't seen breakfast cereal. It's always just been like toys and stuff like that.
Okay. But yeah. And in the 90s, it was all about those breakfast cereals, including Chex, which I think we're all familiar with, maybe because of this. Chex at the time, it's owned by General Mills now and has been for a long time. But at the time in the early 90s, it was owned by a company called Ralston Foods. And Chex was just like not doing very well. They weren't selling very well. They were not an exciting cereal, especially for kids, because it was like kind of seen as this healthy thing. Kids always want sugary cereals. So in 1996, Ralston hired a company called Digital Cafe to help breathe new life into the Chex brand. They actually hired an advertising agency called Walter something. I didn't write that down. But they hired Digital Cafe. They had the idea to make a video game, and then they hired Digital Cafe to make a video game for the Chex brand. So what happened there was probably the most popular advertisement disguised as a video game ever, even to this day. Like you were just saying before, like this is probably the biggest one. So Digital Cafe pitched Chex Quest, which was a first-person shooter game to be included for free in specially marked boxes of Chex. And they wanted to do this on a shoestring budget of just $500,000 and a development time of 8 months. So to do that, they decided that instead of building a whole new game from the ground up, that they would just use the Doom engine, something that many of the folks at Digital Cafe were already familiar with because in their free time, they'd been kind of building Doom levels and mods and stuff like that. Like they already knew how to work with the Doom engine, which is pretty cool.
Imagine how cool working at Digital Cafe would be. That the thing that you do in your free time, they're just like, can you just do this for Chex? That would be so fun.
Yeah. They're like, can you make a Chex game? They probably pitched it themselves, actually. They're like, well, I know how to make games based on Doom. And if we have no money and no time to do this, then like, why don't we just do that? So they reached out to id about using the Doom engine. And this was kind of a new thing at the time to like go to another company and say, hey, can we use your technology to like build a game that's different? This probably wasn't the first time this ever happened, but it was like not a common thing at the time. Like if you wanted to make a game, you built it yourself from the ground up. You didn't really take the tech from another company. So id thought that was like a really cool idea. They thought it would be a great way to like make some easy money because they didn't really have to do anything. And their Doom engine was old anyway. Quake had just come out around this time. This was 1996. I want to say this game dropped on the 31st of October. It was a Halloween game, I guess. But like, so Quake was already out and they were like, you want to use Doom engine? That's old anyway. And we don't have to do anything and you just give us money for it. That sounds great. you're hired or whatever. Not hired, but you know what I mean.
You're licensed.
You're licensed, yeah. So Doom was like kind of old. Might as well make a few bucks off that old tech. So they built Chex Quest, and I'll get into the storyline of Chex Quest here, which is super basic because this is a kid's game after all, right? So the story here is an evil race of green, goopy bad guys have come to invade the planet of Bazoik. They're here to take over and enslave the people of that planet. And this planet is where all of the healthy cereals are made. That's where they grow the fruits and the vegetables for healthy breakfasts and all that stuff. So, if the Flemoids take over, then that's what they're called, by the way, Flemoids. If they take over, then where are we going to get our breakfast cereal from? So the Intergalactic Federation of Cereals convenes a meeting to discuss what to do with this mess. And the regular weapons don't work on these guys. You can't just shoot them with bullets because they don't hurt. Bullets don't hurt Flemoids, I guess. So there's a scientist there who invented a device called a Zorcher that doesn't hurt them, but it sends them back to their own dimension. So you just point this thing at them and you don't kill them. They just disappear, basically, which is pretty funny.
That's a great way to get around violence.
Yeah, exactly. It's completely nonviolent. Nobody dies in this game. Even the Chex man, if he gets hit by too much goop from the Flemoids, he doesn't die. He just can't move anymore. So, that's a game over. So he doesn't die either. So that's great. The mission here, then, story-wise, back to the story, is to head to Bazoik and clear out as much of this invasion as possible. And nobody wants to volunteer because you'd have to be crazy to go in there with all these Flemoids just like really taking everything over, and they don't respond to conventional weapons. It's a bad time. But there's one person who will volunteer, the Chex Warrior. They later renamed him Fred Chexter. And that naming happens like decades later when they released maybe Chex Quest 3. I can't remember exactly.
But before that, he was just the equivalent of Doom guy,
right?
Chex Warrior, generic Chex Warrior. Yeah. So you could be the Chex. You could feel like you are the Chex Warrior.
You are the Chex Warrior in this.
You
game.
are Master Chief.
That's right. So he volunteers. You know those lines from movies or TV shows when you're a kid that just like sort of stick in your head forever, and you're not really sure, like, if anybody else gets them, but they're just there for you, they stick in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I have one, and it's from this game. It's from this opening cutscene where the Chex Warrior agrees to take on the mission, and he says, "I'm from Chex Squadron, and I volunteer." And for some reason, I've never forgotten that line, and I've probably quoted it like a lot, and nobody has ever recognized it from anywhere. But that's not going to stop me from saying I'm from Chex Squadron and I volunteer. Anytime I've needed to something was asking for volunteers and I raise my hand for it, I'll say that, and people are like, "You're weird, dude."
Dude, I love it. There's a couple lines like that from shows that are popular, but I say an obscure quote and no one cares.
Yeah.
In Venture Brothers, the wizard that lives with them at one point goes, "Ignore me," and I just found that so funny because he's trying to be mysterious. And I will say that if I'm clearly wrong and I solved my own problem, no one gets it. Everyone just looks at me like I'm a ding dong.
Ignore me. So yeah, the video here is pretty fun. Opening video. It's like 3D animated. This is 1996. Nobody was really doing 3D animation except Pixar. This is a post Toy Story world, I suppose, but nobody's doing 3D animation for free in a cereal box game at this point in time. So that was pretty cool. I thought. I don't know who made that video, if it was made by Digital Cafe or if they contracted that out to some other 3D animation thing. It's really rough, but it's still cool.
It's cool to me. This is great. Oh man, I'm about to go watch so many videos and play Chex Quest out of this. I love it so much.
So good. So the game starts after this cutscene, which is 3 minutes long, and it plays almost exactly like Doom. It's very, very, very close. So it has 5 levels. They're all new levels. All these levels are new levels. But you run around with your Zorcher. You send in Flemoids back to their own dimension. You navigate the maze-like levels. You collect keys, open doors, flip switches. It's all that stuff. It's all the same thing as Doom. And if you know Doom, you'll notice that all of the enemies are just reskinned Doom enemies. They're just the same thing. And the guns, they're just reskinned Doom guns. They're all the same guns. They're just they don't look like guns anymore because Chex was pretty adamant about the game being non-violent. There's some early designs of the guns that are phasers from Star Trek or toy laser guns. But Chex was nah, can you make them look like a remote control? And so that's what they did. They all kind of look like remote controls. There was another idea that they had to like defeat enemies by throwing fruits and vegetables at them, like nutrition stuff. But then Chex was like, no, what if kids like have food fights because of this? So they settled on the Zorching concept, which I think is really nice. It's the same thing as Doom. You're shooting bad guys, but you're not killing them. They just disappear and go back to their own dimension after you defeat them. So that's pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, I think I would have also taken that throwing food to heart. That was that youthful mind that could have been swayed into food fights.
Yeah,
pretending to be a Chex Quest, the
you would
Chex
have
warrior.
played some Chex Quest and then like run into the room throwing bananas at your brother and been like, "Go back to your own dimension."
Yep, that would have been me. That would it me.
So it's a good thing they didn't do that then, I guess.
Yes.
So Chex Quest is a total conversion mod of Doom, and that means that literally every art asset in the game has been replaced with something Chex related. Some of the stuff is like nods to Doom almost, like the way there are some like sprites of like serial characters that have been like gooped down. I don't know what the right way to say that is, but they're covered in goop, this like green goo from the phlegmoids, and they sort of move kind of like some of like the corpses and like dead bodies do in the Doom games, that are just there for like decoration. So they know it looks kind of like Doom. I don't know. It's just, I think it's interesting that they sort of did that. So while it plays like Doom, it doesn't look anything like Doom. It's like super cartoony, colorful. It's it's for kids. It's something kids would like. I remember setting this game up at a friend's house when it was brand new, and his older brother came in and watched us play it, and he's just like, "This looks exactly like Doom. Like it's the same thing as Doom." And I hadn't played Doom at the time, so I didn't really know what he was talking about. And then when I finally did play Doom, I was like, "This is just Chex Quest except extremely violent." And then I
You're
put
like
two
such a little goody two shoes kid.
Yeah. I don't know if I said it exactly like that, but because I played Chex Quest first.
Quest. Yeah, no, I love that. I love that you're the guy that was like, this is just Chex Quest.
Yeah, I was like, this is just, I've already played this before. So yeah, that was years later that I would play Doom for the first time, and then I got really into Doom for a little while and Chex Quest, and that was a fun time. So outside of the game itself being just sort of like this strange anomaly and that it's really, really fun, mostly because it's just a straight up Doom ripoff and Doom is super fun. It was like this free game that they could have actually charged money for too, right? Like this was a full game that, like I said, it was Doom, which people paid money for. So the fact that you could get it for free was really cool. But Chex Quest also broke some ground like in the physical realm too. Like in real life, because they made nearly 6 million CDs for this run from their master CD to put it in all these cereal boxes. And this is actually, to this day, still the largest like single run of CDs ever produced at one time, because they never made any more copies. And yeah, things have, like there are CDs exist that there are more than 6 million of, obviously, but never in like a single run of like producing the CDs, right? CDs are made in multiple runs, especially if they're sold for many years over time. This was just like one run, and it was the biggest single run ever.
One big batch of 6 million CDs. Never again has there had that many in a single batch. Wow.
Yes. Yeah. So, and then once it was gone, it was gone. So how did they accomplish this? How did they get so many CDs made in a single run? Did they need help? Yes. Yes, they did need help. Mike, do you know who was also printing millions upon millions of CDs in the mid-90s?
Oh, I'm aware. It is a little company called America Online.
That is correct. AOL. So America Online at this time, this is 1996, they're right in the middle of getting America Online in the mid-90s, like getting America to be online. So they were just blasting CDs out left and right with 50 free hours, 100 free hours, 1,000. I think at one point they had like 1,000 hours. I just whacked my microphone. They had like 1,000 free hours at one point. You couldn't go anywhere in 1996 without like just being knee deep in AOL CDs. You open your mailbox, like a dozen of them fall out. Like this was like, that's only a slight exaggeration. Like there were CDs in our mailbox every single day, just AOL CDs all the time. So AOL knew how to make CDs, right? So they cut a deal with Ralston when they ran this thing. They were like, we'll help you make your CDs, but you got to include AOL on every single Chex Quest disc. So they put 50 free hours of AOL 3.0 on every single Chex Quest disc, which was pretty cool. And it runs on Windows 3.1 or Windows 95. So, it was super compatible.
Wow. I had Windows 95.
Well, you
as a child, I could have run it. I think I did have Chex Quest Don't know what happened to the disc. Very sad about it. Like,
yeah, same. I definitely had that disc and had it for a long time, and I don't know where it is now.
Imagine how many of these discs ended up in just a dumpster. That's depressing to know that people just got a disc or didn't own a home computer, because so many people didn't own home PCs at this time. It was so new.
If you're just an adult who wanted to buy a box of Chex and you just like saw the thing in the box and you were like, cool, I guess I'm not going to play this, and then you just threw it away.
Oh, amazing.
Dang.
I wonder how much here. I'm going to do the research. I'm going to figure out how much a Chex Quest disc is on eBay. You go ahead and keep going.
Okay. The game itself was pretty well received by kids and the people who were like sort of comparing it to other free games of the time, which were basically nothing. So like it was basically Doom. So Doom is pretty fun, sort of inherently. Plus, it was free in a cereal box, so hard to complain about that. There's only 5 levels, but after you beat the game, the player is invited to head over to ChexQuest.com, where they could download another 5 levels called Chex Quest 2. And in that game, the Flamoid invasion has made its way to Chextropolis, the Chex warrior's home, and he must confront the enemy threat before it takes over his homeland. It wasn't quite as good as the original, but it was free, so not a lot to complain about.
Free game. By the way, Tyler, how much do you think a sealed copy with included AOL 50 free hours of Chex Quest?
Unused 50 free hours of AOL?
With the game.
Sealed.
eBay.
I'm going to guess $50.
$53.99. That's very close. Good job. Okay. Nice. Yeah,
that
there's actually
almost sounds like not terrible for the nostalgia.
There's one that is the Chex Quest Chex Warrior Edition PC exclusive limited run games sealed and rare edition.
Oh, well, limited run games did a reprint of it in like 2020.
Oh, they did? Okay,
and they
so never
included
mind.
a bunch of stuff in there.
And
so
it looks like it's in a cereal box. That's probably what it was. That one's $200.
Dang. But it has like a bunch of stuff, like a t-shirt and like keychain, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in it.
That's cool, though. Yeah, but if you want one of those original discs, $53.99 on eBay right now.
Yep.
You could just click a button. You could just make the world a better place by giving it a beautiful home.
That's true. Yeah. So Chex Quest 2 was neat also. It was 7.5 megabytes to download, which obviously is nothing today, but on a 33.6K modem, 56K wasn't out yet, it would have taken you like half an hour to download this thing if conditions were right. So you would have to tie up the phone line for a long time. Good luck convincing your parents you need to talk on the phone for half an hour to get Chex Quest 2.
Better, download it at night, like late night download.
Yeah.
Everyone's off the phone.
Yep. In 2008, the main artist on Chex Quest, Charles Jacoby, he released Chex Quest 3. I haven't played through this yet, and I probably should. So he made another one, because this is a guy who makes games for a living, but he also just likes making games like on the side too as a hobby, and so that's probably part of why he suggested, or the team suggested, using Doom, because Charles Jacoby knew how to use the Doom engine to make stuff. So he was like the art guy making art. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So I want to talk about the legacy of Chex Quest here. What did this game leave behind? Well, it quadrupled the sales of Chex cereal during the 6 weeks the promotion ran, which is pretty neat. I would say successful. I pulled a CD from the Chex cereal box with Chex Quest on it, like we were talking about earlier. Don't know what happened to that CD. There's a side note here. They did actually have to get FDA approval for putting a CD in a box of cereal, because nobody had ever done that before. So like had to be okayed by the FDA that they could put this in a cereal box, which I think is pretty funny. They created a beloved game that still has a fan base and community to this day, which is pretty incredible. I feel like most corporate created games like this don't feel great. They feel like, hey, fellow kids, like here's a way to get our brand into your video games so that you see it somewhere else. But I feel like Chex Quest was obviously created with a ton of love by the development team. The fact that they released a second episode for free on the internet in a time when people didn't really have the internet, like it was probably not worth, from a money perspective. Like they didn't make any extra money off of Chex Quest 2, but they still made it and put it up on the internet. And then the fact that like almost a decade and a half later, they made Chex Quest 3 just for funsies. It's also free. So they just made it. It wasn't, and at that point in time, it wasn't like it was great advertisement for Chex, but it just shows that like a lot of love was put into this game, you know?
Yeah.
I think it was awesome to have like a free, high quality game available as a kid. Because you got to remember, back in these days, like free to play games online, downloading games literally didn't exist. Like if you were playing a game and you didn't like acquire it illegally, you paid for it. Like that was really it. Unless it's like something super duper indie that like your friend made that he's like handing you on a disc, right? Like if a game is being actively given away, it probably wasn't a great game. And being a gamer kid in those days, because when every game costs money, and when you're a kid, you don't have a ton of money because you don't have a job or anything like that. So having an opportunity to play something that's relatively high quality for free, that's pretty sweet. Sign me up. And all you got to do is convince your parents to buy you a box of cereal, which we did anyway. I think I ate Chex anyway as a kid. So I think that's a big part of why it was so loved, was because like your choice of games, you didn't have the variety of games you have today. So like playing something for free like this, you played it over and over and over again. And so you develop a lot of memories about that. Because nowadays, if you're a kid and you don't have a lot of money, that's fine. There's plenty of games you can play. If you've got even a half decent PC, you can play a ton of games that are free. Fortnite, whatever.
So
right?
many
like,
free games. Yeah.
Yeah. There's tons of stuff that you can play for free now. That just didn't exist in the 90s. You didn't have those options. Like this was just another option of a game and it was free. So that's why I think it was so loved. Critics, like game critics of the time, were like, this is worse than Doom. Why would you play this? It's several years too late and it's not as good as Doom. I mean, they're not wrong, I guess, but like it was free. Game was free. That meant a lot back then, right?
Yeah, I don't like that critics even reviewed this game personally. I think like it's for children. It's for children to just enjoy for free with their checks. And yeah, of course it's Doom. Of course it is. It's like, fine.
Is it worth the money? What do you mean money? There's no money involved here. It's just a game that takes we could probably beat this game in an hour, right? If you know what you're doing. And actually there's a speed run that I watched earlier today of a guy beating it in 10 minutes on Awesome Games Done Quick, and he kills every single Flemoid, sends every single Flemoid back to the dimension.
Yes,
and I actually knew the guy. I actually knew the guy when I saw the speedrun. I was like, I recognize that guy. I worked with him for a little while. I was like, oh, I kind of know this guy. That's kind of cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So, yeah, the game did get an HD remake in 2020 that you can pick up. It's free on Steam. It's pretty neat, but it really kind of drives home that this game was a moment in time. It's not like super awesome to play today, even in its like remade form. And in fact, the remade form almost emphasizes how like basic and not great by not a great like what critics were saying. Like, well, it's worse than Doom. Like, why would you play this when you can just play Doom? Like, I feel like this remake sort of emphasizes that fact. So I personally prefer to play it in its original form because it's all about the nostalgia for me, and I don't get the same nostalgia rush from the remake. But it's still cool that they remade it, and it came out on Switch this year too, so that's neat.
I like to break out my Gateway 2000 computer with Windows 95 and put in the disc and still see if I have 50 hours available on America Online to download.
Yeah, man,
to download the second game.
When I have more room, when I someday like get a house or something, I'm definitely going to have like a Windows 95 PC set up just for this kind of stuff, just to play old games on. I've got a bunch of old Macs sitting around right now. And yeah, I really want that, like with a CRT monitor and all that stuff.
That's a classic gamer dream from Nostalgia Land.
Yeah. I just don't think you could make this kind of game today. Like, there's no reason to put games in cereal boxes because you could just go to the App Store and download it. If you made a game today, you do it with, like you said, like a QR code, put it on the box, or if you put it inside the box, I don't know, that would be kind of silly. It's just like that was just a different time, and it's just not the same. You just couldn't do it today. But I loved this game as a kid, and I think the amount of love poured into this game gives it a lot of character. And the fact that they had to get FDA approval to put CDs in cereal boxes is pretty funny. And it's still the largest run of CDs ever, the largest single run of CDs ever. And it probably will be forever because CDs just aren't really a thing anymore, at least not in high volumes, not in the high volumes that Chex Quest required back in the day. So, yeah. Did you ever play this game? Like, back in the day, I guess you had it. Yeah,
I had it. I have distinct memories of going to the grocery store and asking my mom to get Chex because I wanted this game.
It worked,
and it worked. It worked on our Gateway 2000. I played it. It's one of those things though, where like my Sega Genesis, I just don't know what happened to the disc. Maybe it was like given away when we got rid of the old computer. It's just. That was my parents' thing, getting rid of old electronic stuff in the 90s was their department. So I have a sneaking suspicion that Chex Quest just left that way as well. Because I have an old booklet of CDs, and I'm pretty positive it's not in there. Yeah. And that's where it would be if it was anywhere. I wouldn't have kept the cool paper sleeve or anything. But I did play the game. I have fond memories of it. I really enjoyed it. Also, had not played Doom at the point of playing this game. So, because my mom, when we were kids, was very against like violence in video games and stuff.
Mine too.
And so this was the kind of game because I was like, they're just teleporting away. Look, and she's like, oh, okay, and then she let me play it,
not realizing it's just the same game.
Yeah, I haven't played the remake though, so maybe I'll give that a shot. Maybe it's free on Steam. I'll just download it real quick and give it a shot.
Give it a DL.
Give it the old college try.
So yeah, that's Chex Quest. There are a few like documentaries online that talk about it, that dive a little bit deeper. But it was just like a moment in time. I just think it's really cool, and I'm really happy that even as recently as 2008, there was a sequel being made by the guy that made the original game, or one of the main people on that team. I just think that's so cool.
Yeah, it's like when I talked about that game on the Genesis that I played, that the military one. I forgot the name of it, with General Chaos. I think it's called like General Chaos or something like that. It's a little like 3v3 against the computer with like a squad combat where you have like grenades and stuff. And they tried to remake it and it failed. It makes me happy knowing that one of those went through. Like one of those became a project that went through. And I don't even think the guy kickstarted it if he was doing it for free. He just put it out. I would like more stuff like this to come out.
That's good.
And have creators from these old games that we remember fondly put stuff out for them. But the hard part is, if there's an audience. But for Chex Quest, there was an audience because we were all children in the 90s doing this.
Yep. Yeah. And there was just no choice for games, or a lot less choice. So like we were all playing the same stuff too, it feels like. And this was one that literally every kid could get a hold of as long as they had a computer, which, I mean, you're right that not everybody had a computer back in the day, but if you were a kid with a family that had a computer, you were probably playing Chex Quest because it was a game you could get for free. And that means a lot when we were a kid in the 90s.
It really does. Oh man, the memories. And we can do more of these games too. There's more Cool Spot games. There's, as I mentioned before, there's the one about the Noid. The one with the Noid for Domino's Pizza is probably the other more popular one.
Yeah.
Out of these. But there's a lot of these games that were made like this, and so it'd be fun to kind of go into it. And if you know of any that are modern versions of this, we would love to hear about those too. Because I would love to look at like a game like Chex Quest versus a game today. Probably full of microtransactions and ads. Yeah,
or it's just a low quality game. Because I remember Doritos had that Dash of Destruction game, and like the point of that game, basically the reason anybody played it was because it was extremely easy to get the 200 gamer score for it, and the game was free. So you could just like load it up and get 200 added to your gamer score in like 15 minutes, which was pretty cool.
Same with that, like Avatar.
Game. Yeah, Avatar. Yeah, that one you had to pay for though. You had to rent it or something, which I did do. Yeah, and then there's that Yaris game too, the Toyota Yaris game, which was not a good game.
Wait, what Toyota Yaris game? What is this?
It was just a racing game for the Xbox 360, right around the same time as that Doritos game. And
it was about the Toyota Yaris, the little car.
The little car, yeah, and it was not a very good racing game.
Well, yeah, I mean, a Toyota Yaris isn't exactly a fast car. That just seems like you're just driving a car around.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, it was not a very good game, and it was not a successful thing, I think.
Well, maybe we'll discuss the bad games on the podcast next, because that would be fun.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's what I got for Chex Quest. What have you been playing, Mike?
Ooh, well, this week's been kind of fun, because I got to play a lot more Pokemon earlier this week. I played it, I kind of play it once a week in a really long, 3 to 4 hour session. That's kind of how I'm doing Pokemon now. I'm pretty close to beating all the gyms and stuff, though. There's not as many dots left on the map. I'm having a good time with it. I haven't really got into all the extras, like the raid stuff and multiplayer elements, but I do have a group of friends that's doing that. So maybe when I get done with the main story and dual credits, I will go ahead and play that. But also been putting more time into Destiny this week, because we actually started playing it again in Iron Banners this week, and they have a new mode called Fortress that's actually really fun.
Oh, I need to fire that up still.
Because in the middle of it, what they do is you're taking the 3 points as a control match, and then they shut the points off, and a Cabal turret appears in the middle, And then when you kill the turrets, another point appears, and then you fight over that one point that gives you like quadruple points for like a minute, and then it goes away and it goes back to control again. It's kind of cool.
I need to fire up Destiny because I need to level up. I want to do the new dungeon.
Yeah, we should do the dungeon for sure because that'll be really fun, and it's also like the leveling requirements for it are not too bad. Like you might be pretty close the minute you log back in. So, but yeah, it's a good time, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it, and I'm not really playing it that much because really I want to beat Pokemon, and I also want to partake in the Witcher remake now because I didn't know my save moved over, so I have my save still, and I can just play it in HD now.
The big upgrade, the visual upgrade.
Yeah, I'm super excited for that. That'll be pretty fun. But that's what I've been playing. What have you been playing this week?
Well, I finished High on Life, which was very fun. I think we talked about it a bit last week, basically about how it is. It's a good game for what it is on Game Pass. Like I wouldn't have wanted to spend $60 on it, which I know you can on Steam. It costs money. But as a Game Pass game, I got like 10 hours out of it. I had a great time. I will probably never play it again, and I'm okay with that. I thought it was a lot of fun.
That's kind of the beauty of that kind of game. You just beat it. You're like, you're done. It's good. We did it.
Yeah,
it's great.
Wasn't particularly hard. I don't really feel the need to like go back and like get all the things in it, which I guess I could do, but it was fine.
Sorry, I got distracted because I did look. I'm like, is High on Life $60 on Steam? It is $60.
Yeah.
That's pretty expensive for the length of game. And I'm not one to try to like talk like that, but it's...
Well, it's kind of a one and done thing.
It is.
Like, you play through it once, and then, I don't know, maybe in like 10 years, I'll go, that was a fun game. I'll play through it again. Or I'll fire it up again and play for a little while and then stop. But for being on Game Pass, I was like, this is great. This was really fun. I really felt good about playing it. And you do have to be kind of a fan of the Rick and Morty style of humor because it's that stuff, that Justin Roiland stuff. So if you don't like that, you probably won't like the game. That's the main... the main draw there is to just get more of that humor. So if you don't like that, the game itself is not good enough to like hold you if you don't like that style of humor, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. That it really is about if you like that kind of humor or not.
Yep. I also got a Miiu Mini, which is like a little Game Boy thing that plays ROMs of Game Boy games, Game Gear, basically any system kind of up to the PlayStation. It does not play N64 games. But it does play PlayStation games. And I think it is a neat little device for playing through old games, especially because, like, yeah, you can install an emulator, like, on your phone, especially if you have, like, an Android phone, and, like, you would have it with you at all times. But there's something nice about a device that's, like, dedicated to it because I can't just switch away from the game to Twitter or Reddit or whatever. I'm sort of, like, committed when I play with this thing. And it's so small. It's, like, the size of a deck of cards. It's not that big a deal to, like, throw into a bag. And it's when you turn it off, it saves exactly where you were in the game. When you switch games, if you like want to play a different game, it does a save state automatically so that when you come back to it, you just drop right back in where you were, which I think is really, really cool. So, yeah, I am super digging it. So I've been playing the Pokemon trading card game, the fan translation of the sequel that came out in Japan. I've played that for a couple hours. It's extremely difficult. Like, I'm stuck, and I don't know how to get more cards in this game. And I can't beat the trainer that I'm on, which is really frustrating. So I need to figure out if there's like another way to get more cards. Like I have an idea of like a strategy I would want to do against this trainer I'm stuck on, but I just don't have the cards for it, And I don't know how to get more cards. So
someone knows how to get more cards. Email us, codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com.
In the second game specifically, because there's not a lot of information about it online because it's a fan translated of the Japanese game. So. That, and then I started Crisis Core Reunion, the remake of Crisis Core on PC, which I put about 2 hours into already, and I love it. I mean, it's Crisis Core. If you liked the original on PSP back in the day, this is that again, but with better graphics and all that stuff. So, yeah, that's kind of it. And then I hope to fire up Destiny soon so that we can play that dungeon, because that sounds like fun.
Yeah, the dungeons are the way to go, I think now. That's kind of where we have our most fun.
Yeah.
Because we don't have to deal with random people. That's really the real key.
Yeah.
The dream. Well, we have one email, and it's from Ben from Idaho. Do you want me to read it, Tyler, or would you like to read it?
You can read it.
You want me to read it? Okay, here we go. It says, Happy New Year. Hey, Mike and Tyler. Thanks for reading my email the other week. Like a total narcissist, I jumped ahead and listened to that episode. Still slowly making my way through the backlog. Speaking of backlogs, this year, I decided to do something about my gaming backlog. I went through my Steam, Epic, and GOG stores and put everything into the website howlongtobeat.com. It was shocking how much stuff I have accumulated during Steam sales. Currently, I am sitting on 300 games, around 300 games, with a time to beat of 284 days and 7 hours. That's the total time to beat.
Sheesh, I should put mine in and see what it says.
I decided to act. 2022 was the first year of beating games. In the past, some of my favorite games like Skyrim or Mass Effect or Fallout 4, I would just jump into and put in 40 to 50 hours, and then life would get in the way, and I would never beat them. Yes, 11 years after it came out, I had never beaten Skyrim despite 400 plus hours over the years on various platforms. I bought a gaming laptop so that I could bang out games between my lectures. Yes, students, your professor is a slacker who games at work. And then I got my Steam Deck, which meant I could just pop in and play for a few minutes and suspend and come back to it later. At the end of the year, my total of beat games comes to 22, one of which is now Skyrim. My goal for 2023 is to do more than this, but I have had to make some hard sacrifices. I have limited myself to being a completionist in just 2 or 3 major games a year. No more searching every single pot and urn in random Skyrim dungeons when I am level 73 with more money than I could ever spend. All other games I am sticking to main stories unless they completely pull me in. No more random fetch quests for spider butts. I am hoping I can stick with it. Do you have any video game resolutions? And have you too come to the realization that you are old and may never beat your gaming backlog? Have you had to shift your playstyle as you age, like me? Thanks for the great content. Cheers, Ben in Idaho. Thank you, Ben. To answer all those questions, yes, and yes, essentially for me. I do have gaming resolutions. My gaming resolutions is to really diversify and not get sucked into games as service games as much. Because I know I just said I played Destiny a lot not even a lot, just a little bit this last week, but that's kind of my thing is there's so many good games to play, and I feel like games as a service, they're designed to suck you in. I don't want to get sucked in. I want to play them with my friends. I do. But I want to still play other games and beat other games and also go back to some older games.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Tyler?
I'm not big on resolutions in general. And especially gaming ones. I try my best to not stress over things that are my stress relief. Video games, namely. So I don't want to set weird goals for a game. I do like to keep track of what I'm playing, but I don't like to set goals because then I feel like I failed at resting, which is not conducive to good mental health for me. So I have come to the realization that I'm old and may never beat my gaming backlog. I hold on to a little bit of hope that when I'm old and retired, that's when I'll go back through and beat all these old games if they're still playable in some form. But there's so many games, you can't play them all. So you just play what's fun. My play style definitely has had to shift as I age though, because as an adult, you get more responsibilities and stuff that just has to be higher priority than video games. Also, I think, and I don't know if this is a getting older thing or if it's a society thing, but my attention span is not as long as it used to be. I used to be able to play games for just hours and hours and hours as a kid. And now, because there's so much more stuff competing for my attention, I'm as soon as I hit a loading screen that's 5 seconds long in a video game, I'm whoa, I could go, what's on Twitter, right? Or I could just stare at the screen for 5 seconds. So
yeah,
I get gaming ADD where I just jump back and forth between games, or I pulled out my phone and waiting for this cutscene to load, and I stayed looking at my phone now halfway through the cutscene. I don't know what's happening. So that's why a big part of why the Miyu Mini is so nice is because I can put my phone away somewhere else, and it's just a dedicated thing that doesn't have notifications popping up on it all the time. Even when I game on my PC, I get stuff that pops up, emails come through, Discord messages come through or whatever. And it's I'm trying to play games here and you just can't get away from it.
I actually started turning Discord just fully off, like fully exiting it when I play
Yeah.
games on my PC, so I don't get distracted by
I
people
do that.
being online. But yeah, the shifting playstyle as you age is just something that happens. There's just too much to do. There's too like getting. I don't have like a 4-hour gaming window anymore. You know, I have to be an adult.
Well, and even if I did have a 4-hour gaming window, I'm like looking at that and then going, well, but is there a better use of this time? And like sometimes, a lot of times there is like, oh, but there's also dishes piling up, or there's like things need to be done around the house, or I have to exercise because I didn't have to do that as a kid, and now as an adult I have to exercise. So it's like it's hard to, even if you have free time, it's hard to budget it towards video games.
Yeah, I don't know if I've really mentioned this on the podcast, but I got a new job. I no longer work in education anymore. I work for a different company now. It's a private company and I work from home. And it's really interesting because I have people I work with who are working on their like home PC setups. And I'm like, that's just way too many distractions for me. Like I have a different room and a different area and I just can't focus. There's just too much stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
So
I definitely
hard.
have to work on a different computer than my home computer, security reasons, but also like, if my video games were just a click away, that could be bad.
That's me too. Like I have one of the people I work with has like a switch. They like click the switch and your keyboard switches to your gaming computer or it goes to your work computer, but they're on the same desk. And I'm like, I need a different room. I need to be completely away.
That's my
from
setup,
everything.
but it's enough of a friction that like I would have to I keep my PC off, so I would have to wait for it to boot up and all that stuff. So like that's usually enough to keep me from like playing a game, but I do have my monitors and stuff, keyboard and mouse are all the same. So I'm like, great, I'm done with work now. And then you just press a button, you're like, now I'm at home.
Now I'm at, that's what you, I like to think you say that out loud to no one every time you're done.
Yeah.
Now I'm at home.
Working from home is like, the positives there are a lot of positives. Some of the negatives are like the drive home, the drive to and the drive from work, even though they're long and not very fun in Los Angeles, like at least it was a time for my brain to reset and like go into not work mode or go into work mode. Now I just press a button, I switch to a different computer, and I'm like still thinking about work problems.
Yeah, that happens to me too. It's hard to adjust.
Yeah.
That was a great email though, Ben. I'm glad you're going through your backlog. I'm glad you're getting it done and you're actively finding time to do it. That's the hard part, is just find time to do it.
Yep. And commit to doing it too, because like I said, there's other stuff you can fill your free time with, and sometimes I have to consciously make the decision like, no, I want to play 3 hours of High on Life today, and then I do it.
You know what? This is actually a great little segue because Ben mentioned a gaming resolution. I kind of have a resolution and I'm starting something new, and I actually did start it already. I have a Substack now, and I should plug that on our podcast. So I have a Substack. It's like a writing thing. I don't know what the difference is between a Substack and a blog. Is there one? I don't think there is one.
Substack, it seems like the main method of getting it is like getting it in your inbox. Like that's a cool thing.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. But I have a thing where every week I'm going to write about something video game or comedy or culture related, and I'm going to put it out on my Substack. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, it's just Mike Coletta is my Substack, MikeColetta, all lowercase. I have a tweet about it on my Twitter profile. So if you want to subscribe to that, you can do that for free. It takes a paid subscription. I set it all up because I felt like it would be weird not to set it up, but I do not expect that in any way, shape, or form. I would just be happy if someone subscribed to it. So there's that. Things you can also do is we have a Discord server you can join, and you can go to codexpodcast.net, which is our website. There's actually a link to the Discord server on there. There's also old episodes and all the sources we've used in the past. Tyler's on Twitter at SneakerElf, I'm on Twitter at mecoletta, MECOLETTA. Then you can send us an email at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. That's all the ways you can reach us. I think that's it for the day. This was kind of a longer one. Do you want to say bye to everybody, Tyler?
Goodbye, everybody.